Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of For the Love of the Game. I'm your host, Mark Belville, as always, joined by my co-host, Steve Lewis. What's going on, Steve? How you doing today?
Doing wonderful, Mark. How are you?
Good, man. As you can see from the back, guys, it's Masters Week. So everybody's excited. We got a special Masters preview show for you guys. We're also going to break down later on in the show the national championship game as well in college basketball. Gonzaga and Baylor had what we thought was going to be a better game, but needless to say, enjoyed that game last night. I'm going to get into our ad reads really quickly. We want to talk about RX Hemp over at rxhemp.com. Go check them out for all your CBD products. They got all natural pain treatment creams over there. Use code RXHemp-USN to save 10% on your whole order. And then, like we said, it is Masters Week. College basketball is over, but we got baseball. The NBA is still in full effect. So if you guys are gamblers, you're into sports betting, go check out MyBookie over at mybookie.ag. And when you sign up, use the code USN100, and they'll match your deposit 100% up to $1,000. So, like I said, we got two special guests today. One of them is a returning guest, good friend of the podcast. We got Spencer Aguiar joining us for at Tee Off Sports on Twitter. He is the host of the Better Golf podcast, and we also got the outright king himself. We're gonna call it. We found out today his name is Ryan. We're gonna call him King for the show. So I'm gonna bring those guys on, welcome them into the show. What's going on, guys? How you doing today?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
For the listeners, Ryan is one half of the Misfits. Self-declared. Obviously Chet's down, and I think he went for Savannah. Now he's in Florida with his family on vacation. So
the Rocket, man, enjoying the good times.
We'll hope that we'll get that round table going eventually in the future. But awesome to have you guys here. I appreciate you guys both coming on.
Yeah, I'm going to try to fill in as the other half, I guess. I'll do my best to.
You got some big shoes to fill, man.
Yeah, those are big shoes for sure.
Yeah, Spencer's got a good reputation. He's got to be careful, We can just go nuts with our fake names.
Well, so I actually asked you both pre-show if this was your favorite week of the golf thing, and both of you agreed that this was the Super Bowl of the golf week. Obviously, it's a little different now than what it was past COVID year. We had the tournament back in November. So my first question is, obviously, with the Masters, we see a lot of the same guys basically competing at the top. And I think Cantlay put it great last year when he basically said, every golfer's out there looking for their one comfortable round where they actually have that good feeling when they roll into Augusta the next time. And I think Cantlay had that last year on Saturday where he shot 65 or 66. I might be wrong if I'm saying that. But let's first talk about how you go into handicapping this Masters in April instead of the one that we had back in November. If you want to go Spencer first, that'd be great.
Spencer, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think when we look at this tournament, the iteration of this that we got in October, we had soft conditions, a tournament record score of 20 under par from Dustin Johnson. I don't think that that's necessarily what we're going to be looking at this year. I'd expect the course to be fiery fast. I think strokes gained around the green, 3-putt percentage. I think you're going to have to score on the par fives. You're going to have to avoid damage on the par fours. And, I built a model out for this tournament that I tried to encompass all of what I am trying to find. Because when you look at the Masters and you look at Augusta, you need a complete game to win this tournament. You're not going to be able to win this from one specific skill set. So I built this out in a fashion where I have a weighted par five, weighted par four, weighted scrambling. All those things encompass a bunch of different stats in there. So just for one example, on my weighted par five, I have par five birdie or better percentage. I have par five going for the green, and I have proximity from over 175 yards. So when I'm trying to build this out, I'm creating my own stats, trying to differentiate my process a little bit and try to get a complete player that I'm going to be able to find to win this tournament.
Okay. Now, Ryan, I know you deal with a lot of just outright winners. Do you dabble at all in the DFS world? And if
not
you do,
really. I talk to these guys about it. I'll occasionally jump in with my brother, but I just don't think I have the time. Spencer seems like he spends hours and hours on it, with the family and kids and all that and work. I'm like, I don't know how he does it. I look at the board. I'll ask them their thoughts on their models. I'm just I'm a field guy. I would watch a lot of golf. There's certain guys I won't touch. I think we all know there's certain guys I love, and I make a list on Saturday night. I mean, the majors are different. Like I built my card throughout the year. My card was all set. I knew who I was. I snagged Spieth obviously months ago. I took Canley a while back, and I'm like, I'm just gonna take JT or Bryson up top. You know what I mean? That was about it.
So basically, it was just like we talk about this. I think I talked about this on the last show. The majors actually give you an opportunity to actually go out of your way and range the markets and pick winners in advance to be able to get the best possible number. Obviously, a lot of people that took Jordan Spieth, maybe just having a good performance early on in the year, were getting odds at that point of 45-1, 50-1. And then all of a sudden he goes out, he wins the Valero, and now he's the odds-on favorite heading back into Augusta, a place obviously where he's won before. Obviously, there was much better days going for him in that time of his life, and then we come into this year now. He's really had some good events, struggled on the Sunday, but was able to put it in at the tournament together. Do you think that a 9-1 outright for Jordan Spieth is warranted, one? And two, do you think there's any value in that at that point, Spencer?
No, I mean, I think and by the way, King is very modest with what he was talking about there. He hits more outright winners. There's a reason why he's the outright king. So, he is the ultimate when it comes to that. But if we're looking at what Spieth is at this point, 11-1, 12-1, 10-1, whatever you're looking for at it, the value's gone. This was a much different handicap when it was 60, 70-1. I know both of us were able to grab him at a price that ranges around that territory. It doesn't mean he can't win this tournament. I do like him, and I do think he's going to play well. And I think that's probably reasons why both of us backed him, is that if he comes into this tournament with form, he has a chance to succeed. It's just at 10-1, I think the value's gone, and you're looking at a different market at this point.
Yeah, like King said, he took him. I think you said he took him a few months ago. So I'm sure at that point you're getting way better value than obviously right now. And actually, that's not bad because he's actually been playing well for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I liked the fact he won last week. I know some people were excited about, he won last week and he go back to back. I mean, I think he needed a winner in his belt to compete in a major again, to be honest.
Yeah, he's been slumping for a while. Like just to hop back into it and get his first win in a while in a major would have been tough. So just to see him win, obviously that can only help him going into this week.
Absolutely.
So how many winners do you put on your card for the week? And do you gauge the same unit value towards each one, or does your unit value based on how high of odds they actually are into the for the tournament?
I usually do. I mean, I'd be on. I don't really care discussing money figures at all. I do to win a couple 2,000, 2,500, 2,500 on majors. So I'm looking to put 250, 300 in play, an 8-1, 8-1 scale. Once every 2 months I break even, right? So that's what I'm looking at.
And Spencer?
Yeah, I'm trying to build mine. I usually have about a unit in play when I do it. I'm betting it to win 8 to 12 units for the most part. My Jordan Spieth ticket, I wish it was larger than it was. I have 0.12 units to win 8.4. Obviously, if he could have guaranteed me he would have been a 10-1 golfer, I might have bet him more as if he was a 10-1 golfer.
Yeah, obviously, yep.
What, sorry?
I said no. Yeah, obviously that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, if you're thinking you're going to get great value, or in the past you're going to bet him, knowing if he's going to come into form coming into this week.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where I wish I would have. There was a lot of ways to play it, and we talked about it the last time I was on this show, just how you're able to build out these cards. You have a full year to bet them. And I know King did a great job building his card. I probably didn't get as many values that I like, but that Spieth one goes a long way. It just gives you a completely different build from what you were able to get if you didn't do it.
I got to ask you about Rory McIlroy, because every time this year, McIlroy always gets brought up. Obviously, he's going for the career Grand Slam. This is the only major he hasn't won. I think he's 14-1 right now, I want to say, as far as odds. How about a guy like McIlroy? What do you see him doing this week? How do you see him competing this week?
Well, I think you can find him even as high as 18-1 at some books. My biggest concern with Rory is he's never won the Masters. Maybe this is a good thing that he's entering it with not as much pressure. My biggest concern with him is we haven't seen him put 4 rounds together at any point within the last couple months here. He's also never won a tournament at lower than 12 under par. And that doesn't mean that he wouldn't have won a tournament at lower than 12 under par, but that's like old versions of Rory where we'd see him win at 12 under. The second place person would come in at 5 under. We don't see Rory lap fields the way he used to. So, I think that with the difficulty of the course and the way it's going to play, I can't get myself to back him. But, that's just a personal preference with where the number is. I would need a much higher number than where it is right now.
So I would say I wouldn't touch him right now. Like if I have call like a 25 maybe, and he's not. I don't know if I would say he's not going to get there, but maybe he is soon because it's been. And I like Rory a lot. I like his honesty. Every time he talks, I like him more. But it's just not a guy. I think I backed him at the Tour Championship 2 years ago. It's the only time in my life I've ever backed him. I just took Koepka and Rory, and that was it. And he's just the value is just not there for him.
So you talk about his honesty there, and I thought that one of the more interviews that he had was when he talked about how he was happening to rediscover his swing again because he got so into the Bryson DeChambeau, swing thing where it really did kind of mess up his swing for a little while. And he actually did answer that question honestly. Knowing that he was that honest about something that, could maybe mess him up for a little while. Obviously, we don't know how long it's going to last for. Is he in the situation where, like with Jordan now it was, where you now have to see him win a tournament before you can actually start backing him again just to hope that he can get that form going?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Spencer.
No, sorry, Ryan. I don't know if I would necessarily go that far with it, but like the problem is we're not getting any drift in his number for the most part. Like, sure, he's climbed from 14 to 1 to 18 to 1 at some of these books, but I still think he's too short. Like, I'd like to see a little bit something more from him. I don't think the form is nearly as bad as the perception is. A 16th at the Farmers, 13th at the Waste Management. He missed the cut at Genesis, his 6th at Concession, 10th at API, then the missed cut at the Players, and whatever we want to view as the match play where he essentially had a middling result there. But I need to see more than what I'm seeing if I'm going to back him. Like I think King is pretty astute with his number there. I would say at 25 to 1, I could consider it, but we're not going to see that with him. He just has too much name recognition, and I can't imagine he's going to drift into that territory anytime soon.
Imagine him thinking he had to work on his distance when he saw the price and stuff.
Yeah,
it's wild.
Did you guys see Bryson? Did you guys see Bryson's practice video of him just swinging in front of VJ?
Yeah, it's great, awesome.
Like blowing his back out.
No, he's fine.
Yeah, he is. It's unbelievable. Guy's an animal.
I had to finally take the plunge. I tried to parlay him twice. I had Gonzaga money line with him last night just because Chet can parlay golf odds. I was trying to get him to like 25 to 1, just hammer him. It didn't work twice, so finally I took the plunge today on him at like 11 to 1.
The one thing I like about you, King, is like you're not bashful online. Like you'll go at people, you'll expose frauds. Like one of the big kicks that I got out of you was, and it was something so stupid, and it was like right when everything finally started being televised again. Like golf was the only game on TV, right?
Yeah.
And the Golf Network had everybody by the balls. All they had to do was just put coverage on their network like normal people, and we all would have watched it no matter what because there was nothing else going on, and they still dropped the ball. Is TV time the worst thing that they do, or is it the groupings that they put out every week?
I think the TV coverage with the commercials. I mean, I get it. It's a numbers game. It's money, but I mean, it's just like they disappear.
Golf has always had the worst coverage, I think.
It's so bad. I mean, they disappear like this. It's like the live look in. It's like, how about you just show the golf on the 17th hole on like Sunday? Like, why do we even why do we have a commercial on the screen right now? It's unbelievable. The Masters is good. I think they do the 56 minutes of every hour on Sunday, that's good. So I mean, at least they got it kind of right. They do everything right with the app too,
Well, they do the playing through now, like on commercials, like where you can kind of watch it side by side. Yeah. But I've always had like big gripes with like the grouping. It was like the one big thing I think we talked about, Mark, a while ago was getting Brooks and Bryson in the same group on a Thursday and a Friday. Like everybody wants to obviously see that tandem on a Sunday, but we haven't got that yet. So like, why not just do it on a Thursday and Friday, especially early on? You can do it in any tournament, and I think everybody would stop and watch that grouping.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to protect him and prevent we want that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough because the PGA always has like certain ways they go about groupings. Like they usually always put like past major champs together.
Yeah.
Like there's always certain like formats that they have, but like just break it, just do it, and give the people what they want.
Exactly. You want more fans? Do it.
So
I gotta ask you guys about, and I know we're talking about some outright guys, and and Spencer. I know Ryan, you usually do more outrights, but are you guys looking to attack anybody in any matchups this week? I don't mean to see if we're talking about a guy like Tony Finau. By no means do we don't think Tony Finau can win because Tony Finau just doesn't win anything.
Yeah.
But I could see him the first 3 days shooting really good numbers, so maybe attack a guy like that. Any guys you guys are looking at as far as matchups are concerned?
Yeah, I have a couple. I mean, I know King will like this one. I wasn't able to find the price against him, but Matthew Wolff was somebody I was trying to pinpoint a matchup against. Bubba Watson would be fitting into that same category for me. Lee Westwood is a guy that my model has him 150 to 1. He's like 35, 40, 50 to 1 at most books. He's the most overrated guy for me. And then I've gone back and forth a little bit on Colin Morikawa. I talked to King about it a little bit yesterday. My biggest concern is I think at some point he's going to dominate Augusta. I just worry about his short game and his putting. I don't know if he's going to be able to keep this up for 4 days with his streakiness with it. So those are 4 guys for me that I was trying to find a matchup against. I mean, if we go a little bit deeper, Scotty Scheffler's played a lot of golf. I know Chet won't like to hear that one if he tunes in. I know that's his boy, but that's probably the 5 guys that were the first 5 guys that I tried to look up a matchup against.
now, is that for full tournament or is that just for the first day?
Yeah, those would all be full tournament matchups if I could find them. And I wasn't really able to find as many. The books this week did a pretty good job of the guys that I think the sharp action is going to go to. I think they placed them against guys that there's big juices that are going to have to be laid in these plays. And I'm not a guy that loves to lay, over. I mean, I like to take dogs when it's possible, but I'm not looking to lay minus 150, minus 170 juice on a lot of these matchups, especially in a tournament like the Masters where there's only 89 players. The top 50 and guys are going to make the cut. And when we look at it, this is probably one of the easiest tournaments to find people that aren't going to win. Only one golfer has won the Masters age 45 or over. That would be Jack Nicklaus at 46. A first-timer hasn't won the event since Fuzzy Zeller in 1979. So if you just take those 2 stats there, that eliminates 20% of the field that actually has a chance to win this. And if we're talking matchups, things change. Like, I kind of like a guy like Carlos Ortiz this week. I don't think he can win the tournament. I just think his short game can set up nicely. Maybe he gives you a top 30 type performance. But you're going to be able from the outright sense at least to eliminate some people from the start. And I think that makes it a little bit easier when we already have a condensed field.
I think there's a Finau and Westwood matchup. I mean, I like Finau there.
I would too, depending on I guess at any price, really. I mean, it's like,
minus 140ish. I mean, I don't mind laying. I bet like an asshole. I don't mind laying the lumber something.
We did just get a retweet from the Rocket, so he is tuning in. So I just wanted you guys to know, shout out to the Rocket.
Cheers.
My guy.
So I talked about to you guys the other day when I was doing my outrights, and the 2 guys that I have right now is obviously I took Cam Smith. You guys got a better number than me. I have him at 30 to 1, but I think it was for a stat that you had put out that there was only 10. Was it 10 golfers, Spencer? That were in contention after you did a certain thing with your model. Cameron Smith's obviously made the cut every time that he's been at Augusta. So obviously the trend's there, and obviously he's played very well. So he was a guy that I was high on. And then, you put me on to Brian Harman, and I know that people go both ways on Brian Harman, but if there's one thing I think about when I think about Augusta, it's that lefties have had an advantage at this course over the years. Obviously, Bubba Watson has dominated here. Phil Mickelson's done very well here. Do you think like a guy like Brian Harman's a good play this year, especially with his form coming in? And how do you feel about Cameron Smith?
I think King knows how I feel about Hartman. We have this conversation almost every single week because we have differing viewpoints on him. But I really like a guy like Harmon. I think if we look at what he did at the match play, I thought he was the best person in that tournament. He's riding good form with a third at the Players. He probably has a top 10 short game in this field. And as you said, this lefty narrative at the Masters is important. He's going to be able to miss shots in directions to where he's going to have an easier time getting it up and down. And then as far as Cameron Smith goes, there was 13 guys in my model that when I narrowed it down that I thought had a chance. He's sixth in my model this week. He's inside the top 10 in par 5 scoring. He has all the around the green stats that you want to see here. And even if we take his performance from last year and say, okay, well, the course was a little bit easier, he still has a top 5 2 years before that. So Smith was a guy I like to target. I think he has a really good chance to break through here. Like, obviously, it's tough to do it at a major and finally win your first one, but this feels like as good of a test as he's going to find if he's going to pull one off.
Yeah, I like the Cam Smith play too. I mean, if I was to start my card this weekend, it would be totally different, and he would hit like him, Berger, Reed, Morikawa, Ray. They would all be. I'd be peppering that range, I think. And I think he could actually win. I mean, there's people like the people that Paul Casey love. Like he's not winning the Masters. I'm sorry. Like I think Cam Smith can maybe.
So what's your problem with Brian Harmon, Brian?
I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I don't have a problem with him like I do.
Is it because he looks funny?
Maybe. Yeah, I heard he's a drink.
A lot of people say he looks like Wahlberg.
I feel like I'm always against him in matchups, so I'm always sounding off, like just going nuts on him, getting the group texts.
I'm pretty sure you said that he looks like a penis. And Mark, you think he looks like Wahlberg?
Dude, that's what a lot of people say. He looks like Wahlberg.
So we got one guy saying he looks like a penis, and the other guy saying he looks like Mark Wahlberg. That's a huge gap in an idea.
Mock.
I'm probably the one that said he looked like Wahlberg with my love for him. So that would probably be.
It's like Shallow Hal. It's like
Dude, I've just heard it on golf broadcasts all the time. Like people actually talk about it. Shallow Hal?
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah,
Shallow Hal, right?
Yeah.
That's an old school movie.
Yeah, I like those two plays though, Steven. I think both of those guys, like I don't think Brian Harmon can necessarily win the tournament, but there are some really intriguing numbers out there. I like him for a matchup bet if you can find one. I think if you can get him as a top 20, 30, 40 type play, he makes a lot of sense there.
Is there a way to attach outrights to forward thinking, being like, all right, I like the 100 to 1, but I don't think that he can win. But if he turns around and going into Saturday, he's say like T3, and you say to yourself, all right, I'm looking at the board now, and I know I could have got him 100 to 1, but now he's like 27 to 1. Are you still willing to pay the price tag at that point? Or if you don't pay the price tag at all, you're just fully out on it?
No, I mean, like one of the things I do is I have a little showdown model that I put together. And so I incorporate a lot of my pre-tournament research into the tournament. So I'm using like the stats that we're actually getting, which would be more difficult at Augusta because those stats are just hard to find. I don't really understand. Like you get the strokes gained total, but you don't really get everything else that goes involved with it. But if somebody is like, if I like Harmon before the tournament, and then I run a model where he's still in like the top couple names and he's sitting there at 20 something to 1, I'm willing to bite into that number. Like, I think you can find value in different ways. Like, obviously it's optimal to try to get it before the tournament starts. But with that being said, you can save some of your bullets for when the tournament starts and try to, get a guy that's still at a price that you think is too high.
Yeah, NC Punter, he likes to go, and he's a big internee guy.
I knew you were going to say that.
Nah, I feel the same way too. Like I don't just because he's 100 to 1 pre-tournament. Like I mean, especially if I have no dog in the fight. I mean, I got to get in there somehow and fire. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, I'm a big live better like during games. So I from like the golf standpoint, I just didn't know that like if you were sitting back just waiting to see how somebody's going to perform for a couple of days before you actually initiated a bet towards them.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes a lot of sense too. Like, I think the one thing that's important is, depending on how you structure your card, you always need to leave yourself some bullets. So you can't overexpose yourself before, and then the tournament starts, and then you like add 3 more names to the list. Like, if you have some room to still add people, that's completely fine mentality. I think live betting, I think there's a lot to be said about it. Watching a guy play around, wait for the market to be slow to move, and attacking it, when you actually have a chance with the ticket rather than when the money's dead, when he, implodes on day one with it. It's just, I just wouldn't be going in with the mentality of like, okay, I want to bet 1 unit on this. I want to bet 2 units on this for the whole tournament. You put your 2 units in action, and then you add another, unit of play after that. I think that's where you run into problems, and you start overexposing yourself a little bit.
All right, so we're gonna get to the part of the show like where I see it come up a lot on the Twitter feeds. It's the favorite play, the sleeper play, the player you're playing that no one else should play, and your fade. So, do you have 4 in mind right off the top of your head right now, Spencer? We'll go Spencer, then we'll go Ryan.
Well, I will say this: my pick to win the tournament is Patrick Cantlay. My favorite play is probably Xander. I know I'm in my own little boat on that one. I haven't seen too many people on him. I think he's a really good DraftKings play. I think he's a great par 5 scorer. I think his recent form is probably, it's probably given us an inflated price there. And then if I'm looking for 2 other people, a fade for me, I would say like in that range, I'm going to fade Morikawa. I'm going to fade a lot of those guys. And what was the last one? Sorry.
A player that you're playing that you don't recommend playing to anybody else.
Well, I mean, if I'm trying to keep his ownership down, I'd probably say Brian Harmon. Here. If I'm trying to go a little bit outside of the box there, I guess Carlos Ortiz, it's his first time here. We know guys don't win in their debut here, but I bet him to be the top debutant at 3-1. I think we saw him come 15th at concession. I think his short game, for a DraftKings type setting, I think he's a guy that can give you a top 30 finish. And, if we're able to fit the top of the board the way that, like if Cantlay and Xander are competing and a guy like Ortiz is up there, all of a sudden, like that's pretty big differential from what most people will have. And I think, that's how you make a lot of money in these things when you're trying to leverage ownership and just diversify from everybody else.
All right, so my pick to win is Bryson. Favorite play, I mean, I'm not on him, but I mean, I'd say Reed. I mean, I'd have him at my card starter this week. Westwood fade, and actually, you know who I kind of like this week deep down is I like Homa with the corollary courses and stuff. To be honest, at like 100-1, yeah.
Yeah, I think Homa makes a lot of sense too. Like, you're going to get his first performance here, but I think is this his second one?
I think it's second because I'm not certain, but I think so.
Yeah, no, you're correct. He missed the cut last year, but that's a version of him that is not quite the player that he is now. When you look at what he's done recently, he wins the Genesis. He comes 7th at Pebble. He comes 10th at API. So he's bringing a lot of form into this. I think that he's a guy that has big upside for him. So I like where your mind's at there.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to me because I feel like the chatter through the last few weeks is I've been hearing like a lot of Matthew Fitzpatrick's name, and then all of a sudden we get to the week of, and I'm not hearing any Matthew Fitzpatrick at all.
That's how it should be.
Was that you who tweeted out the picture? He tweeted a picture of driving down Magnolia Lane, and you're like, "Hey, you're going to be leaving there on Friday afternoon."
Yeah, I hope it. He'll probably do fine. He always, every time I talk shit, he always does fine. But I mean, I don't get. I mean, for the outright market, people are like, I don't get it. I'm sorry.
The one thing I'll say, and I think maybe you should put your fingers in your ear here. I'm not betting Matthew Fitzpatrick, but he has really good form coming into this week.
He does.
Like he has a bunch of top 10s. I think he's a pretty good DraftKings play. The problem is, if we're trying to find his first win on the PGA Tour, it's really hard to imagine that it comes in a major. He is a qualified player in these European tournaments. We've seen him win there. It's just a different nut to crack trying to win a Masters and trying to win your first tournament as a major. But, from a DraftKings perspective, I do like him this week. And I never utter those words. Like, this is one of the first times I've ever recommended to play him before.
Well, I think my lineup had Adam Scott, Matthew Fitzpatrick, Jordan Spieth. I think that's where I rounded out, like, where that was. So is Adam Scott even on the card or even in the thoughts this week?
He's in my thoughts a lot. I mean, I like to value him now, but I also don't. I don't know if he's ever going to win again in a field like this. I mean, the talent's there, the swing's there. I don't know.
Yeah, he's one here. I mean, he plays well. He's a good putter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of would utter the same thing as King. Like the form hasn't been that great lately. the putting is good enough that maybe he can turn it around. You put him in a place where he's comfortable, as you said. I mean, even in the last 4 years, he has a couple top 20s, a couple top 30s aside from that too. But I just don't know. I mean, I think he's going to be popular on DraftKings because of what he's done in the past. And if we're looking for a guy that's going to win, there's just other places I'd rather go.
Yeah, I mean, he won. It was 9 under, so I mean, it fits the narrative that it could play, say high single digits. But I mean, it might be a reach. Who knows? We'll see.
So I got to ask you guys about, we haven't really talked about him yet, but the defending champ, Dustin Johnson, obviously we know he crushed this course back in November, shot 20 under over there. He took last week off, but he's playing well. He's rested. I was talking to Steve before this. I don't really like Dustin this week. I don't think there's much value there. And guys just don't repeat at the Masters. Like, it just doesn't happen. Tiger did it early 2000s. Before that, Nick Faldo did it many years before that. Like, it just doesn't happen. Do you think you guys see any way DJ can repeat and win again this week?
Well, I mean, I think that what you just said, it's really hard to repeat at this tournament. To me, 9-1 is just a little too short by my math. I don't think the form equals a 9-1 golfer. He's 44th in my model for par 5 scoring. He's 52nd for weighted scrambling. And when we look at when he entered this tournament last year, like, sure, he had really soft conditions, and you can't take it away. Everybody had that sort of a feel for what you had to do. But his form was elite. I mean, that's some of the best form we've ever seen entering the Masters. And I just worry that it's just not quite there right now for him. Even when he was at the Genesis where he was competing there, I thought he fell apart on the weekend. On Sunday, he looked horrible. His A game is about as elite as can be. I mean, if we're looking for the ultimate upside, it's probably Bryson, probably Dustin, it's probably Thomas. Those three guys separate themselves. It used to be Rory. I mean, if he can't ever get himself back there. But I just think the price is a little too short. I mean, if I'm going to play Dustin, I'd more so be trying to do that from a DraftKings, maybe a big millionaire maker where everybody pivots to Rahm or Thomas, and you can get Dustin at like 10% compared to the rest of the field. But it doesn't mean he can't win. Dustin has elite level skills that he can get the job done, but I'm just not eager to back him at 9-1.
Yes, I feel the same way. I mean, can he do it? Of course. He could come out and dust the field again, but I haven't seen any. I mean, 9-1. I mean, I don't even know if I take him at 12, but I don't think anyone's going to give you 12, nor should they, you know what I mean? So it's just, I never consider, not a consideration.
Now, now, Spencer, you tweeted out a picture of John Rahm this week. He had his child. Thank God they actually had it before the tournament, and then we saw like a lot of money start pouring in on him that point. Obviously, we know he's a great, talented player, and probably having the burden of not thinking about having to leave a tournament halfway through for the birth of your child is something that you don't have to think about. Was that a big component into why the numbers juiced up a lot more when everybody knew that Rahm was going to be good to go for 4 days at the Masters this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw that it drifted up to about 14, 16-1 on a lot of places. And as you said, that number got beaten back down once the news came out. And, this is a conversation that I have with Chet and King all the time when we're discussing these things. Like, Rahm is the number one player in my model from a 2-year sample size. The problem with that is it's becoming difficult for me to keep backing him at that number when he doesn't win these tournaments. Like, it's starting to become like, I feel like we beat up on Finau a lot for that he doesn't win. And Rahm does win tournaments, so I don't want to compare the two guys. But, if you're having to pay 12-1, 14-1 on Rahm, and usually my model has him as a guy who should be 10-1 in this field. I mean, that's what I have him this week. So he's a positive equity play for me, but it's just becoming more and more difficult for me to back him at these numbers. If he's not winning, you're paying a big price, and, those units add up fast with it. So, I think Rahm has a shot here. I think the Masters is probably the best tournament for him if he's going to pull it off. Like, as I said, like, probably like Thomas, Rahm, and DeChambeau would be the three guys I would be looking at if I'm starting at the top of the board on one of those three. But it's just difficult with Rahm. He has to prove it at some point and turn it around in a major.
Yeah, I took Rahm last year. I mean, I had a monster Bryson ticket, so I went hard on Rahm too. I shit you not, I went to the bar on Saturday. The first shot I saw when I walked in was him to top the ball in the fairway. I just couldn't get to it. I couldn't get back to him this year. I mean, it does set up. I mean, it's a second shot golf course. I'm not in love with that from that aspect. But I mean, he did win Memorial too, which is a second shot golf course. So I mean, he can win anywhere. He's one of those guys.
Yeah, and you're dealing with like really fast firm greens here, and Memorial is another tournament that was fast firm greens at the Premier Field Village. So you could maybe see him do that. I think he's always a guy who plays better when it's a single digit winning score and not a 20 under par winning score. So like if Ron goes and wins this tournament, I'm not going to be shocked by it at all. I mean, he can definitely do it. I think he's one of the most likely guys to do it. It's a hard number, and part of it is too the way I built my card out. I didn't have any more room. You know, I had my ticket on Cantlay. I decided to go to Xander. I had some things built out a little bit deeper too, and I didn't have enough room left to add him to the card. And it's one of those things. If he wins, he wins, and I just couldn't find him onto the final ticket of mine.
Yeah.
So I wanted a degenerate special this week. I was looking at first round leaders, and immediately, and I think Mark would agree with me on this, was the first thing I thought about was Charlie Hoffman, especially after what he did in this past tournament. I was like, Charlie Hoffman, first round lead. Charlie Hoffman is not in the field.
No.
Stunned. Like absolutely stunned.
Yeah.
Is that a market that you both try to just throw a Hail Mary at each week just because you just want some Thursday action? And if so, are you looking at anywhere this week going into the tournament?
I don't, so he can go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the first round leader market either. I think it's a real volatile market. Part of the problem is you get a lot of dead heats in there where you don't get the full payout when a guy gets it. And that's one of the reasons I don't like it. I will dabble here and there. I mean, if I was to throw out a name just as we'll try to get pretty deep in here as a random person, like Ryan Palmer, maybe. I don't know what his price is right now for a first round leader. To me, he's a guy. He's fourth in my weighted par 5. He's eighth in the stat that I have, which is going for the green. He's in 2 shots. He's fifth in par 5 average. Like if a guy can get hot in the par 5s, and maybe he gets hot with his putter for the day, he can make a run at it. I mean, it would have to be somebody like him though, to where I want a good par 5 scorer that can do that, and then just be manageable on the par 4s and don't blow up there for a day.
I'll piggyback off that. If he is a first round leader, I would immediately think to go over 71.5, 72.5 on a Saturday with him.
Yeah.
Once he's in session.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I don't think he can maintain it, but I think he's one of those guys that you can get one round out of him.
Absolutely.
Anything else, Mark?
I think that pretty much wraps it up, guys. We definitely appreciate both of you guys coming on the show. Really going to enjoy this week. And we'll let you guys go. If you guys got anything to plug, Spencer, you can start.
Yeah, so, you can find me on Twitter at TOff Sports. I host the Better Golf podcast with nice hat, Mark. I'm seeing that you're wearing it. And I do that with stick picks. And, both of us are analytically driven. We build a model. We try to deep dive the board from the bottom and work our way up with it. We're trying to provide a blueprint of more sustainable success with it. We're diving down every single road of the market you can do. And then I write some stuff for Roto Bowler. I have a Vegas report that I put out with betting stuff. And I release a spreadsheet every single week on Twitter where you can go on, make a copy of it, weigh all the stuff the way you want to do it. And I'm really proud of that. So, check it out. Try to see if you can incorporate it into your research process. And once again, guys, appreciate all the support from both of you. King, it was great being on here with you. And, love to do this again anytime.
Do you guys enjoy the par 3 contest?
I kind of do. I mean, Tony Finau broke his ankle doing it, so I guess he enjoyed it a little too much, but I kind of like it.
I remember when that happened, I immediately went and I max bet like 2 guys against him in a matchup, and he stumbled to a 3rd place finish. I got slow.
Yeah. Well, that's why the next year I was on him, like when he finished 3rd when the year Tiger won, was because I was like, I watched him dislocate his ankle, and then I watched him actually put it again. And we all know that that course is not an easy walk. I mean, I haven't obviously done it, but that's what they all talk about. Like, it's pretty strenuous to be able to do that for 18 holes, especially on a bum ankle. So that kind of gave me the same idea this year. Like, we talk about good feelings with certain players and how they look at the course going forward. Like, it's hard for me to not think that Finau doesn't feel good coming into Augusta at all. So that's why I would target him early in the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
thank you guys. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's not something I ever you told me a couple years ago I'd be doing this, I said you were crazy, but so it was fun. I appreciate it. Let's find some winners this week.
Absolutely. Best of luck to you guys. I can't wait to see the flowers blooming on Wednesday when they do the part 3 course. Enjoy your day off from work. Have a couple beers. The card's set, and yeah, we're
Thanks
live
again,
now.
guys. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right, brother. Love it, man. That was Spencer Aguiar and Ryan. We didn't get his last name, but that's Ryan. He's the Outright King. Go follow them on Twitter, guys. Spencer's over at Tee Off Sports. And then Ryan's at Outright King 59. They are giving us some great golf content. Weekly picks, outrights, all that good stuff. So if you're into golf and betting it, like those are 2 must follows in the Twitter world.
Yeah, I mean, I love that Ryan's a Boston guy. The accent was coming full through right off the bat when he was talking. He's the guy that just like slings the shit against the wall, right, Mark? And he just goes there and he's thrown out there. Spencer will go from a computer standpoint. And I think that I think that what makes them all so good is like Spencer's really going to get into the analytics of it, but ultimately it felt like the King is just an eyeball guy, right? Like he sees what he likes, he goes with his gut.
And a lot of times that's the way to go. Like don't overthink things too much and just look at it in the eye test. And I know a lot of these analytical guys are not for the eye test. It's all numbers and whatnot. But a lot of times you can tell just by looking who's playing good and just by watching a lot of times. And it proves with him. I mean, he's hitting all these outright winners.
Yeah, and he brought up Max Homa, and it kind of goes against how Spencer models and who he picks. But we also know that Max Homa has been one of the hottest golfers going. And from a mental standpoint, a guy that's really struggled with keeping his composure in the last few years. Seems like he's finally starting to get to a place where he's very comfortable on the golf course and he's able to handle the adversity now because he just, he's obviously just had a win a few weeks ago. I think that was the Genesis that he won.
That's the Genesis, yep. Yeah, it was. He won a few weeks ago there.
That's like an I dare you pick. But that when I talked about live market, like he was definitely a guy that like if I felt like had a good first round, good second round, like he might be a guy that I would probably throw something on going into the weekend because you probably would get still decent odds because he's just not a winner at that course. So the guys that they talked about that are 8-1, 9-1, like unless they light the world on fire on Thursday, you're most likely going to be looking at those guys' price tags around the same amount on Friday going into that second round.
Yeah, I think we talk about that every week. Like, why take somebody with 4 rounds where you can get the same number with only 2 rounds to play?
Yeah.
Like, just might as well do that. At least you get to see their form for a couple of days and see how they're playing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, big week this week, guys. Like we said, it's the Masters and everything like that. But we got a big game to get into from last night. The national championship game.
I mean, was it a big game?
I mean, it's a national championship. Gonzaga going for undefeated season since first team since Indiana in the 70s. Is that not a big game?
I mean, it was. I mean, the fact that it's over now.
I mean, it wasn't close. I don't know. I mean, I didn't say it was a good game. I said it was a big game. It was
over at the 16-minute mark in the first half. I think I looked at you and I said, I think it was 19-4 or something like that. And I told you the game's already over.
Yeah, that's true. But Gonzaga, we saw them all season, right? I think we did see that, but then me and you also were like, Gonzaga should make this a game. They should be able to score, and they've done it all year where they've been down. Like we just saw it against BYU in the West Coast Conference Championship. They were down 15, come back by 10. Like obviously Baylor's a different animal. They're more athletic. We know the quote now is they work out with the football team. Like they're just bigger, have more athletic specimens than Gonzaga. And then I don't think anybody saw that coming yesterday, though. Like Gonzaga's defense was suffocating. There was one point where Baylor's defense was suffocating against Gonzaga. There's a point where you and I were looking at each other where like they're not even getting shots off at the rim.
No, they were turning the ball over.
They were turning it over. Like I think within the first like 5-6 minutes, they'd gotten like 4 or 5 shots up to like Baylor's like 16 or 17 shots.
Yeah, we actually turned. We said, well, that's the problem here. Like, it's not that Gonzaga's not shooting correctly. They're just not getting shots up. There were, like, Timmy was trying to take the ball to the hoop a lot. He was fumbling the ball away. And I don't care what anybody says. Like, Drew Timme had a great tournament, but he was very, very bad in the national championship yesterday. He really was.
Fall out.
And it didn't help that Suggs got those 2 quick falls because ultimately it didn't allow him to be aggressive through that whole first half. And you obviously saw in the second half when he's aggressive, he can do a lot of good things for you. So getting those first 2 falls was huge. But, credit Baylor. Like, they did exactly what you need to do. You need to come out, you need to stop on their throats, and you need to shoot the ball very, very well. And we talk about it. Guards win the NCAA tournament every year, and it's hard to argue that the best backcourt in the tournament was not Mitchell and Butler, and all rightfully so. Like, they dominated last night on the
You
biggest
can throw
stage.
Teague into that mix too. Teague played very well.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about like his little hit shot. Like, hey, it goes in.
Goes in.
It absolutely goes in, and their bigs were definitely very, very impressive. Even when Gonzaga went to Timmy and Watson, it really ultimately didn't matter. And I think the one person, and I kept saying it out loud, like searching for him, like, you got nothing out of Yayi last night. You really didn't. And that's a guy that gives you 15, 16 points consistently every game. And he was just not doing anything last night. We saw Kispert get an early injury, and it seemed like they were reeling. The one thing about Gonzaga, though, and you said it, you keep saying it to yourself, and that's what you say about all great teams that win consistently, like, give it time. I think I was saying it about the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl, like, give it time. They're eventually going to score points. And it just didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
And I tried to, like, Monday morning quarterback or Tuesday morning quarterback, technically, what could have ultimately happened if it wasn't so much Baylor. And I just don't know, if you don't play a lot of close games all year, how does that weigh on you going forward, right? And we see it in the regular season, right, Mark? Like, there's look ahead spots where teams just don't get up for a team because they're thinking about the matchup going forward, or they just played a huge game, put all the emotion that they had into that one game, and then they just are not ready to go the next game out. And you have to wonder, since since Gonzaga was pushed in that semifinal by UCLA to, and we can argue so the cows go home, like, that was one of the best games in NCAA history. Like, that's just a fact. Like, that game was close all the way through. It was back and forth. It went to overtime. It took a buzzer beater half court shot. Like, the only time that I could really, like, compare it in recent history was when Wisconsin actually took down the undefeated Kentucky team in the semifinals, right? Like, It was almost like a foregone conclusion that they were going to win the national championship after that. And you had a Duke team that was a pretty solid team waiting for them there, and they absolutely handled them no problem. So I have to ask you, like, was it a detriment that Gonzaga was pushed so hard in the semifinals, and ultimately that was the reason why they just didn't get up for that game? Because, like we said, like, they lost that game in the first 4 minutes, no doubt. And you have to wonder if the emotion was a hangover from the last game, and you had Baylor chomping at the bits because they absolutely dismantled Houston in that national semifinal.
Yeah, definitely one team had it easier than the other in the Final Four. Like you said, Baylor just absolutely killed Houston, and then you had that unbelievable game between UCLA and Gonzaga. But I don't think that Gonzaga going into the national championship game took it lightly. And I also don't think they might have looked ahead past UCLA, and that's why that game was so close, because UCLA at the end of the day was an 11 seed, but they were playing very well. Obviously, we know Johnny Juzang, Tiger Campbell, Jaime Jaquez, all these guys are making names for themselves in the tournament. They're all playing very well, so definitely not a team that they should have looked past. And maybe a game that was a lot closer than a lot of people might have thought that it would have been. I mean, Gonzaga was, what, a 16-point favorite? Or I'm sorry, 13-point favorite going into that game. So obviously a huge favorite, but emotionally, I mean, it could have been draining because you go into overtime, it's a longer game and whatnot. So they could have been drained, but I don't think they looked ahead. I think they were ready for this game. They're going for an undefeated season. You're playing the number 2 overall seed in the tournament. You guys have basically been on a collision course all year. Like, we've said it, it's going to be Gonzaga and Baylor. It's what everybody wants. Those are the 2 best teams, and it's basically them versus the field. They both get to the national championship game, and I think there's just things that happened in that game that hurt Gonzaga, like Suggs getting those 2 early fouls. You completely got to change the way you play with Suggs off the court, and we saw that in the second half when he was able to be aggressive. Like you said, he was able to get to the basket and score and play a little bit more aggressively on the defensive end because he wasn't, we only had 2 fouls going into that second half. And then a team like Butler, I think we said, a team like Baylor, I think we said it, is you're going to be able to have to knock down shots. We had thought it was Alabama that was going to give them the biggest run for the money because how Alabama can get hot and shoot it from 3. Well, Baylor's the number 1 shooting team in the country from 3-point range. And so we knew if they could come out and do that, which they were knocking down shot after shot after shot. Butler, Mitchell, Teague, all these guys are knocking down threes. I forgot his name, number 10, off the bench from him. It starts with an F, I think his last name. But he was lights out yesterday shooting from three. So they just had a great game plan. And then the biggest, for me, who made a big name for himself yesterday, was Davion Mitchell. The way he was able to play on-ball defense-wise against Suggs and against all these Ayayi, all these other guys, like this dude was just absolute lockdown and just a complete two-way player last night.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, like their backcourt was awesome, and basically guard play does win the championship, and they inevitably that's what they did. I just don't think you really understood like what I was saying though in terms of did Gonzaga get gassed by that national stuff? I'm not saying that they looked ahead or they weren't ready for that national championship, but from an emotional standpoint, people were talking about that game up until the national championship, right, Mark? Like,
Yeah, I think they might have been tired just because of the emotional of the game-winning shot, like how that game played out. Obviously, it was longer. It went into overtime.
Well,
but I think
one team seeing red, one team seeing like you talked about it. The target was on Gonzaga's back all year. We obviously thought that they were going to play each other back in December. It did not happen. Baylor's watching that national championship, that national semifinal, getting ready. They're seeing red in their head already. They already know who they're playing. Gonzaga was in a war, and then it basically took everything for them to be able to even get to that national semifinal, that national championship game. So you had one team that was hunting, and you had another team that was honestly like while they advanced, like you can't say that Gonzaga wasn't a little wounded going into that game.
I mean, I guess outside of that game, they steamrolled through this tournament.
It's kind of like the boxer that's never bled before. It was like it was like Johnny Uzang caught him with a Cooks, and all of a sudden Gonzaga was bleeding at one point in that game, and it was like Baylor.
It's like when Rocky cuts the Russian in Rocky 4.
And Baylor's
not a machine.
Baylor's sitting back going, oh, he's cut. They're cut. Like they're on the ropes right now. Like think about it this way: if Gonzaga comes out and beats UCLA by 18-20. Don't you think the mind state for Baylor is a lot different going into that national championship? Because in my head, if I'm seeing a blowout, I'm worried. I'm fucking
I don't
worried.
know, dude. I just don't think these teams are both that good where I just don't think watching and see how a team does makes them nervous or makes them say like, hey, we can beat these guys. Like, we're definitely going to win. Like, I think they're going to prepare the same way. Like, I think Gonzaga is just, they know they can't overestimate Gonzaga. Just because Gonzaga had a close game with UCLA doesn't mean the rest of the season doesn't matter what they've done prior to this. They still know that Gonzaga can do, like Timmy's a problem, Ayayi, all these guys, Suggs, Napar, like they are dangerous. And so I don't think they were going into it like, yeah, like we definitely got this.
No, I'm not saying that, but in their heads, they're way better than UCLA. If Baylor plays UCLA in the championship, they win that game. So if you're thinking to yourself like, all right, we're way better than UCLA. Let's see what that measuring stick looks like. And UCLA gives Gonzaga everything and then some. Like, you have to feel a lot better going into that national championship all of a sudden, knowing that Gonzaga's really, really, really not unbeatable at that point.
Yeah, and I don't think, and like everybody was saying too, like Gonzaga was undefeated at that point. Again, everybody was throwing the fact that they play in the West Coast Conference. It's not a tough conference if they had played in Baylor's conference. But I don't know. I was one of the ones that like I don't buy that. Like Gonzaga purposely makes their non-conference schedule the toughest out of anybody just for that reason. Like that's why Gonzaga is now a powerhouse. Like Gonzaga was on the verge of being a Division III school back in the day, and what they've done now with Mark Few and all these guys, where every year they're getting top recruits, and they are a national powerhouse now. Granted, they haven't won a national championship. They've got there a couple times. Both times are blowouts. They get to that big game and they're just not able to figure it out for whatever reason that is. I don't know if we look at Mark Few for that. I don't know if the players not being ready. Like I'm not sure. But we do know Gonzaga's going to come ready to play. They're going to be back again next year and whatnot. And so I think going into it, they were confident. Baylor was confident. I think just Baylor executed a lot better than Gonzaga defensively. And I think the big thing was that defense. Like I didn't see them coming out that aggressively with those guards and defense. We hadn't seen that before from Baylor. And I didn't think Gonzaga was going to struggle with it that much.
I mean, I don't want to change subjects. I mean, we are on college basketball. This
Where are you
idea,
going with this?
This idea that, and I want to make this crystal clear. Like Mark Few has created a program at Gonzaga. Without his non-conference schedule, he's not getting those recruits because they're saying the same thing that you're saying right now.
Mhm.
How, from an NBA professional standpoint, are they going to be able to assess my talent against Pepperdine, against Loyola Marymount, against St. Mary's? You can't. You really can't. So they have no choice but to go out and schedule Iowa, schedule Kansas, schedule Virginia, try to get in any major conference, any major preseason conference, any major preseason tournament that they can get into.
They had Baylor scheduled, got canceled, unfortunately,
because
they were going after the big guns.
They need to go to these recruits and they need to say, listen, you're going to get your ESPN games. You're going to be televised. You're going to get that exposure. That's how you build that program up. Because, and I'm going to swing this to you now because we had this debate the other day, and I now know where I'm going with this right now. It's the idea that if you don't elevate your program somehow, you're always going to be middle of the road. And we talked about Roy Williams stepping down, and obviously we've been on two different sides of it over the last couple of years. Roy Williams can coach. We're never going to disagree. We'll never argue about that.
I thought we were arguing about that.
No, it's basically when you get to the end of your road, and basically it's when things that you believe in and things that you've tried to put into motion over the years just stop working. And for Roy Williams in his age, like things that he really was accustomed to over his career, the same thing with Mark Few is you're not going out of your way to try to get one and done players. Like your idea of building up your regime is to get guys in your program for 3 to 4 years, because inevitably, like that's where the success comes from. Obviously, Kentucky's changed the narrative over the last 5-6 years, but you're going after national championships because ultimately, as a coach, that's what you want. Calipari's obviously took the other approach. Calipari's obviously took the other way, being like, I think I can win with you guys for 1 year. Let's be a dominant team every year with different guys. And I guarantee you that 6 of my guys, or 6 of the 8 freshmen that I recruit that are 5 stars are probably going to be in the first round of the NBA draft. So that's fine. Obviously, Roy Williams has not had to deal with that problem. You go to Carolina, a lot of those guys are staying 2, 3, 4 years, graduating out. And we talked about it, like, a guy that, brought you a national championship, Marcus Page, like he had a speech as he was on his senior night, how he appreciated throughout the years how Roy Williams elevated his game. And we saw it this year. And obviously it benefited Mark Few a ton because for the first time they were able to get transfers to their program and immediately play them. Like, oh yeah, our team is good. Andrew Nebhard, like you'll be next week. It was the same thing with Suggs. Like Suggs was a late recruit. Like people forget that. Like he was one of those guys that came in really, really late. And everyone was like, they have Jalen Suggs now too. Like that's ridiculous. Like that's not even fair. And you saw Roy Williams have to take a step back because a guy that they had coveted that was a 5-star, he was teaching that old school methods, Mark, that you're going to be a freshman, but you're going to take your lumps like everybody else. You take your lumps and you turn around sophomore, junior, senior year, the progression gets more and more and more, and you get the touches. And we heard it from Boeheim. Like Boeheim was not quiet about it. The reason why Roy Williams is not the coach today for North Carolina is because he couldn't handle the transfer portal, because that inevitably hurts his style.
He's going to lose his freshman.
He's going to lose his 5-star freshman that he gets in and he gets recruited all the time. So we had talked about Roy Williams as a head coach. And was he reaching his players at this point? Because inevitably he's not getting as much time as he used to be able to get with them, because guess what, Mark? You might get the 5 stars, but if they're not happy with good old Roy, they're out of town and they're going to that next
You just
stop.
said it. Like you said it perfectly. Like you had a guy like Marcus Page who came in as a freshman and stayed all 4 years and was like, thanks, coach, for building me up and making me an NBA player. Like he got drafted, and like so for all these other freshmen to come in and to see the history of guys at North Carolina, even a guy like Harrison Barnes, who was the number one recruit in the country, he came in and he stayed past his freshman year. Like you have all these guys that are staying and becoming better players. So why would you get pissed to come in as a freshman and maybe take a little backseat at the beginning, but ultimately, step up and possibly win a national championship, which has happened even going back to the Raymond Felton, Sean May days back in 2004. Like it's been like that for a long time in Chapel Hill in North Carolina, and they've got 3 national championships since 2004 to show for it, which is more than a lot of teams can say.
So few now has the opportunity to say, like, listen, like we're on a main scale now, like we're going to do everything to promote you. So we're going to take these 5 stars in. If they want to jump to the NBA now, so be it. Roy Williams not about that life because Roy Williams can't get the most out of his player because of the kind of coach that he inevitably is. I'm never going to say that Roy Williams is not good at the X and O's. Do we believe that he wasn't reaching his players at this point in his career? I like to believe so because, it's in his records. It's the way things looked. Like, yeah, you got a championship, but we talked about it. There's a reason why Hubert Davis is in there as the head coach, and it had to do with a lot of him being able to put the legwork in over the years to be able to help that regime be able to be a constant. We talked about, though, your North Carolina, like, you can call anybody in the nation and who has any job. It doesn't matter. Brad Stevens, Boston Celtics. We'll even go that far. Like those guys get a phone call first before they hire Hubert. And I know what you're saying. Like we're North Carolina, we keep it all in the family. This is how
That's
we do
just
it.
what they
This is
do.
how
It's
we
a
roll.
proving track record
This is what
when they
they
hire
do.
coaches.
Yeah, but this is what they do until they don't do it, right? And when you have a program like North Carolina, like my biggest gripe against your Roy Williams argument was he's got great coaching philosophies, right? Phil Jackson, triangle. Certain players in the triangle succeeded. Other players, Carmelo Anthony, shout out Carmelo Anthony, did not succeed. It's the same thing with Roy Williams. Like he's going to have his philosophy for all these years. And if he's able to get those recruits that make it easier to allow his game plan to be able to excel, which are the 5 stars, that's inevitably what keeps him going in North Carolina. So we talked about all the time. Could other people have done his job just the same, if not better, these last couple of years? I firmly believe yes, because you're still going to get the same exact talent that Roy Williams was getting at that university, bar none, because you're going into the little kid's room or you're going into a junior or a senior that's ready to go to college. And North Carolina is a blue blood. Like it's a top name. Like it doesn't matter who's coaching that program. People are immediately going to be like, North Carolina is one of the top programs in the nation, whether they win the national championship or not. And I don't know how you disagree with me on that and not understand the point that I'm coming from.
I don't disagree with you on that. I obviously know that's who they are.
It's who they are. So to say that like Roy Williams' job has not been easier since he's won national championships is just not true, because we talked about it again last night. Like Scott Drew has never won a national championship before. Is it going to stun you if Scott Drew's in a national championship 3-4 years from now? No, because inevitably now he goes out, he says, look at Baylor championships. My guys are going to the NBA. Like everything that this one team did this year ended up setting up his tenure for the next 5-6 years a lot easier now, because he doesn't even have to recruit. He doesn't have to recruit as hard anymore because his name is what it is now. Baylor, national championship, come here, NBA chances. Like it's already written on the wall for people to see it. So they don't have to work as hard as they did before. And that's inevitably what I thought was going on with Roy. He doesn't have to work that hard to get good players in, but it's
he kind of does. Because if you look at the Tar Heels, like who have they gotten to come in over the last 3 years? Like a lot of those guys are, they have been on the team. Leaky Black, Garrison Brooks, like they're guys that have come in. They weren't like high recruits. They've been there for 4 years.
True. That's not true. They were all high. They had
Cole Anthony, who, but they're not getting the guys. But he got hurt, right? But they're not getting the guys recently that are. So you always have the projections, right? When these guys are in high school, like, yeah, these guys are going like straight to the NBA. This guy's gonna like a guy like Cade Cunningham and Jalen Suggs, like prior to being in college, we're like, yeah, these guys are top 5 NBA draft picks. Like Carolina hasn't been getting those guys over the last 3 years outside of Cole Anthony, because Cole Anthony got hurt.
But and once again, like he's getting McDonald's All-Americans, but the landscape of the college game is changing. You got the transfer portal.
If you don't get a top 10 college player, you get the 50th ranked college player or the 20th ranked. It's a lot different.
Well, because it's North Carolina, 4 top 50s are going to always oversee one top 5 player. That's what they're getting. Like they're getting complete team performance.
But the talent level is not the same.
That's not true, though.
Yes, it is the true, because you guys, a guy like AJ Reeves and David Duke, who were McDonald's who were top 100 recruits coming out, and they are not the same talent wise as like a Cade Cunningham or a Jalen Suggs.
Like it's just 100% true. There's going to be top tier talent, but That's not.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And those top tier guys haven't gone to North Carolina in the last few years. You had Cole Anthony, who coming out was like he's going to be a top 5 pick, but then he got hurt.
Yeah, but things have changed, right? Because now you're fighting against the transfer portal. You're fighting against seniors now graduating and then going overseas to play professionally. You're getting the G League to now take these players on for a year, like RJ Hampton did, and then they're able to get drafted the next year. Like all of a sudden, the old school is up against so many new things that they're not ready for, and that's why
and I'm not arguing that. Like, I agree.
That's why
Roy's out. Like I think that's probably why Roy's out. It's not because he can't coach anymore.
It's not that he can't coach anymore.
Too much to deal with.
Yeah, but the game is changing, and also like I don't think that he was able to reach the players the way he was in the past, and I don't think that you can really argue against that. I think you have a situation though that the college landscape is definitely different now, and these transfer portals are going to change the game forever because everybody's a free agent now. You get an extra year eligibility, you're a free agent. Like if you don't like your situation where you are, you can cry, you can leave, and you don't have to sit out a year anymore. So
I think that was the best thing to happen to college basketball.
You think it's the best thing to happen to college basketball? I think it's going to make I think it's going to make college basketball so top heavy that it's going to become gross because all of a sudden all of these great players that are on these bum mid-major teams are saying to themselves, I have 1 year eligibility left. Let me head to the SEC. Let me head to the ACC. So the Power Fives end up doing well, but everything that makes the whole.
It's always all about the Power Fives, anyways.
Yeah, but you have teams like Gonzaga now, teams like San Diego State, teams that are like from other like not big time conferences that are trying to make noise, and they're able to use these advantages in their favor now, being like, listen. You come here, you're going to have the same opportunity to succeed because ultimately it's just being able to be on TV, right?
Yeah. I mean, when's the last time a Power 5 school didn't win the national championship?
That's it. It's all about being on the ESPN, like, and allowing people to see your talent. And we can argue that Mark Few has the West Coast, but that's a layup for him every year to be a 1 seed. Like I'm going to have a great team early on. I'm going to
odds are he's going to go undefeated in his conference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as long as he's winning out of conference, it's a number 1 seed.
Yeah. So I love college basketball. I really do. I think the NCAA is despicable. I think that they are scam artists, and I think a lot of people will agree with me on that. But nobody puts on the best product of the year like the NCAA, right? Like they pulled it off this year. They pulled it off in a bubble. You and I both know the NCAA March Madness tournament is going to be way better next year. But I think that having it this year,
we got fans next year.
We got fans. We got the atmosphere.
Full stadiums.
There's something to be said about tiers. I mean, that's what I root for. Like, right?
Tiers?
Yeah, like who is going to be the viral fan, band geek, little child? Like what's going to be the snapshot where I see the tears coming down? Because nothing says March to me more than crying, right? Like that's just what it is. It's the highest of the highs and it's the lowest of the lows. Think about UCLA. Like how would their fans have been if that happened to them in the arena? Like we don't get that reaction. We don't know what it is.
No, that would have been unbelievable.
We were seeing Hep Cronin every fucking basket that UCLA was scoring, and then all of a sudden Jalen Suggs banks it in, and we don't get any more Hep. Hep is done. Hep's dead. Like it's over. Like
he's not dead, but like
the
best thing was we're watching that game.
If I would have
Jalen Suggs put him in the grave.
It's one of those out-of-body experiences. I wish that every time, and no one's ever talked about this, every time they showed Hep Cronin, everyone's like, they're making the Sister Jean happen again. Like, all right, enough. Like, all right, congratulations. The one time I wanted to see Hep Cronin is when Jalen Suggs buried that 3 from half court. That reaction would have been everything to me. But we don't get it. We don't get to watch.
You can't put a dead man on camera.
Huh?
You can't put a dead man on camera.
I mean, I haven't seen him since. Hep Cronin is now in Nate Robinson territory. Like something bad happened, and we have not seen them since. It's over. Like I don't even know if Nate Robinson is still breathing since Jake Paul knocked him out. Like is Hep Cronin still alive? Is he going to be he's going to be at the Final Four next year? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but there's always great storylines, and sometimes I just feel like they mess it up a little bit. But you're right. This was and I think we talked about it in all sports too. Like champions have been super chalky, right? Like I think
Yeah.
everybody's had a pretty good idea going into major sports, like who they thought the champions were going to be, whether it was baseball with the Dodgers, whether it was football with the Bucks. But we could argue both ways, right? Like hot money all year was probably coming in on Kansas City to repeat. Brady ends up going to Tampa Bay. That ends up being the hot ticket coming out. Those two square off in the Super Bowl. We talked about Gonzaga and Baylor all year. They squared off in the national championship. Hockey, Lightning, like it's just the list goes on and
Very
on.
chalky.
NBA, Lakers, it's pretty predictable at this point what's going on with major sports. So that's why, like, while I was happy that we got the best possible matchup I thought that we could have, the one thing that makes college sports so great is usually, besides college football, obviously, because it's Bama and Clemson, like usually college basketball keeps it moving, right, Mark? Like we'll always have like the top teams competing, and that's what it is. But you had a sneaky team like Oral Roberts, who I know that we're going to be keeping our eye on early on next season. That made a big splash, and they're going to get their backcourt back. We learned a lot about this year in terms of how we view regular seasons to how we view postseason, because ultimately a conference like the Pac-12 fared a lot better than I think people gave them credit for going into the NCAA tournament, as a lot of us, favored the bigger conferences like the Big 10 and the Big 12, who get the most teams in regularly. And ultimately, it didn't matter. It just didn't matter.
Pac-12 was powerhouse come tournament time. It's just that thing, once teams get into a tournament, I think we talked about it with Syracuse too, where like it's just for whatever reason you can throw out whatever they did during the regular season. It just doesn't matter. They just, at that point in time, I don't know if it's the atmosphere, the court's bigger, like I don't know what it is, but it just seems that teams know how to play during that time of year in March. So definitely can't really value. I think we learned you can't really value too much. You don't want to undervalue the regular season, but you definitely can't overvalue it. And sometimes you just kind of got to go with your gut, especially betting wise and whatnot. And don't be too analytical at sometimes.
We'll leave the college basketball season on this. So what I learned going in this year was, and I saw it early on, and we start with a little difference with the transfer portal, is Sharps really did have a good grasp on understanding like what players leaving certain teams, whether obviously it was past year, it was the Ivy League catalog transfers, how they would affect certain teams successfully. A lot of people were on Alabama early on in the season. A lot of people were on these big dogs all the way through. Like, so for me, and Greg Peterson has talked about it, like every time he clicks the button, there's another 100 transfers in the portal, and I think understanding that going into next year, there's going to be some real good prime examples of some really good preseason value in national champions, because you should have a pretty good grasp on like these top mid-major talents heading over to the big Power 5 teams, and ultimately how much they can really elevate the numbers. So that's going to be something that I really keep a keen eye on, probably late September, early October, when everything starts, where all these kids finally start getting into the programs, because not only are you going to get them in the programs, Mark, there should be a pretty good practice schedule regiment next season, right? Like we have to assume that COVID, while it's still always going to be with us, we should be able to get teams back into their gyms, their universities, and on a regiment schedule like that was a lot better this year, where they're really not worrying about shutdowns anymore. They're really not worrying about dealing with the quarantine process. They're really not worrying about the testing that much, and ultimately, they're not going to have to worry about not being cohesive from the jump, because we saw like teams that were really young that while the Kentucky's has always had the upper hand every year, because usually Calipari can whip those boys into shape once he has a full season with them, because you always see it like Kentucky really starts to shine come January, February, because those young kids are really starting to finally gel together. They didn't get that opportunity this year. And you saw that, like, it doesn't matter who you recruit or how good those recruits are. Like, you need coaching, you need practice time for those young guys to be able to make it happen. And they just didn't get it. I think things are going to be a lot different next year. And I think early on, you're going to really have to capitalize on bad numbers, because I think that if you know what you're doing, you're going to be able to be really successful in that November part, because you're getting a lot of those early preseason tournaments, and that gives you a pretty good idea early on not only how a team is shaping up, but how they also fare on a neutral court.
Before we head out, early pick for national champion next year.
I can't answer that. What kind of question
Way
is
too
that?
early. Way too early.
What kind of question is that?
Dude, it happens. Everybody does it. Way too early. Top 25. So who do you like, man?
Oh, on national, I gotta pick a national champion. Like
yeah, we won't hold you to it.
I don't even know
bring
who's
this back
how do
next year.
how do you know who's returning? You don't know who's returning.
Like for me, I would say I would like kind of a sleeper pick. Like if everybody stays, I like UCLA next year.
Yeah, but they're not going to stay. We talked about
you
this.
don't know that.
Juzang
The
cannot
only player is Juzang.
Yeah, he's not going to have a better stock profile than what he has now. Like he showed everything that allows him to be able to play at the next level at the highest form. Like there's only regression for him. I always bring up this story. Like Ryan Gomes was a sophomore. He was an All-American candidate.
Here we go.
And
let's go Friars.
He decided to not go out that sophomore year where he would have been at least a top 15 pick. Stayed another 2 years. Next thing you knew, he was the 55th overall pick. Like that's just the way it happens. Like you can't like chance things going back to school when inevitably there's a pro career right before him. Because let's be real, Juzang went to Kentucky because Kentucky gets guys to the NBA. Like he didn't go to Kentucky thinking I want to be a 4-year guy at Kentucky. No. Like he's talented enough that he was able to get in that program. So he got main stage. He was the dude. We talk about it every year. We talked about it last year too. There was a lot of guys that didn't get that opportunity to elevate draft stock with the NCAA tournament. And now you have a perfect example of a guy that probably shot himself into the lottery over the last few weeks. And you think that he might possibly come back next year? You're right with UCLA though. UCLA does have enough coming back besides him that should be competitive. But I don't see Juzang's coming back. But are you gonna?
But I'm saying if he does. Like that team is dangerous next year.
Tiger's
coming back. Hawkins is coming back.
Yeah.
Like they have a full squad returning.
I agree. Last thing before we wrap up the show, thoughts on Paul Pierce? I mean, we got to talk.
I don't think he did anything wrong. I don't think he did anything wrong. Like he didn't do anything illegal, right? He didn't do anything illegal. But I get why ESPN did what they did because they have an image to uphold and they don't want any part of that. But I don't knock him for doing what he did. I mean, who even knows what that was? That could have been a bachelor party. That could have been, who knows? He's smoking weed, but it's legal. He's in California. Like, he's not breaking the law, in my opinion. So I get why ESPN did what they did, but I don't fault Paul Pierce for doing what he did.
But we talk about guys just putting things out on social media all the time that like doesn't make sense to even do it. Like
I don't know why he would do it. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like I don't get like what he's doing. It's like, oh, let's put this on live right now. Like why would you say that? But it doesn't make any sense. Like he had to have known that like if this goes out to the world, he's gonna get canned from ESPN. But again, it's Paul Pierce. Like I don't think that bothers him too much because he's up for life. Like he'll get a job like this Barstool. There's these other controversies. He can go the podcast route like Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes do. Like they're just strictly like on that podcast and they just talk all the shit that they want. Like he could go that route and be like a bad boy or whatever. Like I don't know what his motive was to put that on live. But again, like I don't see anything wrong with what he did.
All right. I mean, like I said, like I think there's always going to be critics of it. I just think from a professional standpoint, it wasn't the smartest idea to do it.
Oh, definitely not.
But from a lifestyle standpoint, damn.
True.
Like damn,
He's
right?
Truth.
Like you're just playing poker. You got girls massaging you. They're clapping cheeks on the floor. He's getting high. Paul Pierce is living his best life, and like I said, like he didn't need to show me that for me to believe that like A-list big time money are able to do like random things. But in my head also, like if he thought that was so cool that was going around him and to put it on, maybe those things aren't happening every now and then.
They could be.
I just thought on the road as an NBA player, like it's all out. Like James Harden's all out, right? Strip club, strip club, strip club, strip club, strip club. So,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like everybody knows what he like. James Harden goes to the strip club.
James Harden is looking at Paul Pierce being like weak.
Like, what is that?
What's that?
Like it's like what Paul Pierce did. Like that's just a random Tuesday night for James Harden.
Yeah, he's like, what? Like that's like big drinking a 6-pack when you're an alcoholic, being like, yeah, I'm taking the night off tonight.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? But yeah, not a great professional decision. Like, guy's got a ton of money. Obviously, he doesn't really care. No one's really gonna ever look at that and be like, all right, like, well, like that, like, you can't ever put him back on anything ever again. He'll be back on something. But just a wild move. Definitely enjoyed the videos. Obviously for us, like, Paul Pierce is our youth, right? Like, we grew up with the truth. Like, so
that's our Celtics legend. That's our Larry Bird, basically.
That's our guy right there. So, shout out Truth, shout out Paul Pierce,
Truth, if you're watching this, probably not, but if you're watching this or listening to this, I tweeted at you, man. I know you got a lot of free time right now. You're not working. Like, come on the show. Let's talk some Celtics.
Yeah, let's do the damn thing. We'll get Perk too. Perk and Paul Pierce would have an awesome podcast.
Oh my God, they definitely should.
Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Kendrick Perkins.
Yeah, that'd be a hell of a round table.
Yeah, Rondo would be on like guest appearances. They'll get.
They can call it Ubuntu.
Oh my God! Stop.
All right, guys, we're gonna wrap this show up, man. We're gonna get out of here. Go check us out on Twitter. My name's at WiredSports_CEO. Steve's at SLewis5656. Give us a follow. Stay updated with the show. Quickly, one last time for our sponsors, RxHemp. Go check them out, rxhemp.com. All natural CBD products for all your aches and pains. They got a heated therapy cream, cooled therapy cream. RxHemp-USN saves you 10% on your whole order, so use that code at checkout. And again, mybookie.ag. Go over there, try to win some money with us, and use code USN100. When you deposit, they'll match your deposit 100% up to $1,000. So go check them out and get some bets in over there. For myself and Steve, we'll see you guys next week with another episode of For the Love of the Game. Peace, guys.
Ciao.